Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you're having a good time. I can sense this positive vibes over here. Um, and it's a great pleasure to be on stage with you again, Mishal. I've been having panels with Mishal, I think, for the past 4 or 5 years. And what's so interesting about it is every time I do learn something new. Um, Today, we will not talk about the past of Kano Group, but I'll take this opportunity for the next 20 minutes to talk about the future with the master of strategies himself, Mishal. And Mishal,
You flatter me.
let's start it with the strategic vision. Kano Group have been founded more than 100 years ago. But if we would talk about the next 10 years, and now you are in more than 10 industries, where do you see the group going to?
Um, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum. First and foremost, you have to keep in mind that this is an unusual time in the world. An unusual time because it used to take a long time for an idea to come, be understood, absorbed, and then utilized. Today, in the last 5, 10 years, we've seen a flurry of new ideas that possibly would not have been possible 20 years ago, 40 years ago. And they're coming in fast and furious. And the question is, which one do I aim for? The problem is, I can't aim for just one. You have to try and put your fingers in as many pies as possible, because if you don't, maybe the one that you missed out because you thought it was not important becomes the most important thing. E-commerce at one point was considered something trivial, insignificant. Then it became very important. Then with the technology that allowed e-commerce to really flourish, it became the challenging part, that to the point that most retailers are now suffering because of that. If you're not in e-commerce, you have a challenger, and the challenger is not a regional challenger. It's not a local challenger. It's not a regional challenger. It's a global challenger. So how do you face such changes? Now, the only way anyone can do it at this present time, honestly, is either one of two ways. You create yourself something within a bracket of an industry that you see is going to go forward, or the alternative is to buy into several of the companies that are there, be it from the private side, as in the private market through venture capital and VCs, venture capital or private equity, or wait until it becomes public and then you start buying pieces of it. It's incredibly hard to say, this is going to be the industry I need to focus on. I don't know which one it's going to be. Just to give you a simple idea, 2 years ago, those who were in artificial intelligence knew something was going to happen. Most people in the world do not know anything about artificial intelligence to the degree we're talking about it today. ChatGPT changed that. It gave people the impression this is going to be something significant. And then you had all the other companies start to pop up in the artificial intelligence space. How am I supposed to have guessed that 4 years ago? This is a problem. So it's incredibly hard not to say, this is what's going to be, and this is what I have to be in, and this is what I'm going to do. Because in 6 months from now, I don't know what's going to be a new strategy, a new industry that's going to be significant, and who is going to be the main player in it. It's a difficult, very difficult question. But the question most companies have to think about is, if I'm either in it, or in some cases, I might be dead. Not immediately, but in the long term, I might be dead. I might be insignificant.
And that's why probably maybe you founded the JV and started investing in VCs in the last several years, Mishal. But also some, especially in the family offices, family businesses, when they want to implement the new strategies and bring technology and innovation, it's a very slow progress.
Yes.
Do you face this at Kano Group?
Like any organization, the bigger you are, the harder it is to get an idea across, because you have to get a lot of people to buy in. And the people who are the hardest people to get a buy-in, I know I'm going to sound really bad, and forgive me, but the older you are, the harder it is for an idea to sink in. And when you try to explain something to somebody who's in the 70s and 80s, and they look at you like, what? What is this? I'll just give you a small story. And this happened to me when I was in my 20s. At that time, my chairman was my uncle Ahmed, who was a well known and well respected person in the whole region. And this was 95, if memory serves me. And he asked me a question: what's the internet? And I started thinking in my head very quickly. To explain to you what is the internet, I have to explain to you what is a personal computer. Then I have to explain to you what is networking. Then I have to explain to you routers. I said, I don't know, because it was an easier answer than trying to explain all of that aspect to him. It's not easy when you have to encounter people. Again, it's not the middle management, or the management as a whole who don't understand ideas. It's when you have to have the decision maker, and that decision maker is not able to comprehend what's happening. By the way, I don't know everything about anything. I'm constantly learning, and I'm actually happy I have kids, because now whenever I get a new remote control, which I don't understand how to use, I go, please read the instructions and explain it to me, because these things are moving at such a high pace, and it's how do you keep up with it? It's becoming really, how do I keep up with all these new ideas that are popping up? And to be honest, it can be very daunting. It can be very overwhelming. Question is, how do you slice it piece by piece so that you can absorb it? And then, and this is the most important thing, in organizations, you have two types of people. You have those who are, and they're usually the younger ones, the innovators, and the ones who are coming up with new ideas and want to try and test new ideas. And then they have the older ones, the elder members of the family, usually in the family business, who go, it's not our tradition, we don't understand this, it's not our business. Basically meaning, I'm not going to bother myself, don't bother me. So trying to get them to understand, I'm not doing these things for you. Forgive me. If you're 70 years old, how many more years do you have ahead of you? I'm doing it for the 20-year-old and the 14-year-old and the 25-year-old and the 30-year-old who have another 30 or 40 or 50 years coming up. Your decision making is going to affect their lives. I'm not really focused on what you're looking at. I'm focusing on what they're looking at, because they are going to be the ones who are going to carry the torch, not you.
And this is what brings me to the question about the governance in family offices. And I just heard that this early morning that 4% of family businesses keep going after the fourth generations, and more than 96 probably disappear. So I think now you are maybe the sixth generation.
I am fifth.
Fifth, and then the
I
next
have
is
I'm fourth. I have a fifth generation sitting over there.
okay.
And I have a cousin whose son, if he joins us in his 20s, would be a sixth generation.
Sixth generation. So how do you keep this family business, going after 100 years?
There's one
Teach us something about governance here.
There's a lovely thing in family businesses that most people don't talk about. The glue that keeps most family together is fear.
Fear.
Either fear of having a comfy job, fear of not keeping up to what my father or my uncle did, fear of affecting the family's reputation, fear of an opportunity that pops up. I know this might sound negative. Actually, fear is a good driver. Fear keeps you alive. I promise you, fear keeps you alive. Greed adds to it, but fear keeps you alive. And it's not a bad thing. Because we, in the nomenclature, we think fear is a negative word. It's not. When you fear something, you protect yourself. When you fear something, you push yourself. I fear failure, so I push myself harder, right? So fear is not necessarily a wrong word. But having that concept in and around what you call the business is not a bad thing. But of course, I would be remiss to say the one thing I have learned significantly from my family, that what keeps us together is a key word, and that's respect. I have to learn how to respect. And we're brought up with this concept of idea of respect. Yes, we can have differences of opinion. Yes, we can fight. Yes, we can argue, but there has to be a certain amount of respect. If that breaks up, if that starts to go away, then you have a problem. And I think a lot of the family businesses break up from the fourth generation. By the way, I've always wondered why this is the case, and I'm trying to think about this. The first generation, the person who's building this, the entrepreneur who's building this, he's building this with the idea of I'm protecting my family. I want to do something for my family. That's what he tells himself. But what he's doing is I'm doing something for me, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. People want to be selfish. That's a good driver as well. So you build something. The second generation, who might have taken part in the building, but were not the driver themselves, see what the parents have gone through, or their uncles, or whoever is the person who had made it, and have felt a bit of the pain, have seen what it's like to go from nothing to something. So they understand that, feel the pain. So they become custodians. They are trying to ensure what was built, I will follow suit. Then you come to the third generation. And the third generation is completely disconnected from the first generation. They were born where everything was prepared and given to them. So as far as they're concerned, what's the problem? Why is it so hard? Everything
is
here.
Spoiled to some extent.
Okay, I'll use that word. And then there is another problem. They cannot connect with what was the driver at the time. So if I can't connect with what was the driver that would cause this family business to come into existence, then I don't feel it negative if I break away from it, or if I create something else, or if I don't like following suit in this business, because I don't feel the connection. It's not a bad thing, because from that you can instigate a new dynasty. But it's how we treat it. We look at the person who does that, who splits away, as a negative thing. I think if a person has an idea and wants to split away, it's not a bad idea. It's not a bad thing. I give you a case in point. You have one that comes to my mind is the split between Majid al-Futaim and Abdullah al-Futaim. Okay, you could have said when a split happened as a bad thing, the family split up. No, because you ended up having two instead of one, two empires and two economic drivers in this economy that has been beneficial for the economy. I don't think that's necessarily being a bad thing. It's how it's approached.
So you wouldn't mind the business to be split up at some stage in the future?
If somebody can come up with something and the others are not willing to support, why isn't it possible that this person takes his or her share and goes on his merry way or her merry way? I'm not saying this because I want to push people out. I'm saying it because a family business or any enterprise should not be a prison. It should be the driver. It should be the thing that helps you, the springboard that helps you create something or do something. And remember, we create businesses not necessarily to fill administrative jobs. We create businesses because we think there's something that people will benefit from. And if it's a family business, we expect the family to benefit from. But if I'm using this business to enslave the family, then what's the use of the family business?
And Mishal, with more generations coming up, do you think succession planning becomes even more difficult? How do you approach this?
In family business, there's a concept that you either fail to plan or plan to fail, right? But there's also another issue in the planning. There's a planning for succession within an organization, within the business itself. That needs to happen because there's an organization and there are people's livelihoods at stake. But there's also something that you need to be taken into consideration, as in, what if that person is more interested in something else? Do I help them create that something else? If I can help them create it within the organization, great, they stay on board. And I get the smart and intelligent people to come on board. But if I make life so miserable and so tedious, I'm pushing them away. So to plan, I need to think about two things. the two aspects to take into consideration. There is the management planning, and then there's the family planning. Do they mesh together? If they don't, I need to address both separately. One is more significant than the other. I don't need to have family members in a family business for the family business to flourish. I can have professionals manage this. But I do need to take into consideration what the family members need in a family succession. So again, it's trying to understand that two types of successions are needed and required in a family business.
Interesting. And now, as you probably most of you know, there's a trend of companies going public. So we started with government entities. There's a plan to push as well some family businesses to go public, although they are trying to still hold on. What's your view on this?
Each family will take the concept of an IPO differently. Some will look at it as a way to create a structure within, again, governance structure within a family. By having a third party oversee you, you're forcing the party to be a bit more transparent and to be more structured. If that's what a family wants, good for them. What most families are not prepared for, and believe me, they're not prepared for, is to be questioned. They like their own little empire, and everything is done within family members. And yes, you can negotiate within family members in terms of how things are done. If somebody does a mistake, you correct them in a certain way, etc. It's not public. But when a shareholder, has that right to question you, Mr. Chairman, who thinks the world revolves around him, and he's not prepared for that, there's an issue. That is a mindset you need to be prepared for. I need to be able to explain and justify everything I do when you're a public listed company. Most families are not prepared for that. Most families are happy to have it within the family, within the organization, family structure, where they can sit and talk to one another when they do something right or wrong. When that changes and becomes a public thing, it's a different mindset. If they're not prepared for that, don't do an IPO. If you're prepared for that, do an IPO. Because what people seem to forget is an IPO means I have a responsibility not just to my family, but to all shareholders, public included, and that means even the person who has one shareholding of my company. I have a duty towards him or her to protect his or her interests in the company. That is a mindset.
Do you think that this mindset could be changing with the millennials or Generation Z?
Everything's possible. And with education, everything's possible. You can have people come in with understanding, saying, you know what, I don't want to be a dictator, I don't want to be an autocrat, I want to be more inclusive, I want to be more open to the idea, because I can see the benefit of having more people on board. The more people on board, the more easier I can do my business. So you have people who have that mindset, and again, it could be at any age. And those people are the ones who are prepared for an IPO because they want more people on board because they can grow their business. Those who have a closed mindset, and again, age doesn't really matter. Those people who have a closed mindset, they're the ones who are going to really hate an IPO.
Interesting. I think I have less than a minute now. Final word to the family offices in this room here.
Keep on investing. This is the right time. Honestly, we are sitting in one of the most financially bountiful places in the world. The rest of the world is just discovering us. We can position ourselves to make the most out of this one. This place is going to be something significant, and we can play a significant role in it. The world has finally realized how important we are financially. I hope you will make the most out of this and benefit not just yourself, but the whole region around us. We need to have good rules, good regulations, good families, good business, and we're lucky, extremely lucky, to have a good government that understands the requirements of this region. The more we can do, the better it is for us.
Always insightful. Thank you very much, Mishal.
Thank you.
Thank you.